Namaskaram. We will begin day 2. Day 1, recap. As they say in Hindi, abhi to party shuru hui hai. We have 3 more days. For those who don't understand, it means the celebrations have just begun. So we begin our day 2. I would invite Kunal Bahl, the founder and CEO of Snapdeal, for a conversation with Ashutosh Pandey. Welcome, Kunal.
Ladies and gentlemen, anyone who's dabbled in e-commerce over the last 12, 14 years, all have a favorite Kunal Bahl story, right? So let me first narrate my own story, then I'll kind of quiz him or attempt to quiz him. A few years back, I was building an e-commerce portal, very modest compared to yours, but nonetheless. And we were saying, there has to be something which should be different about our e-commerce compared to what Snapdeal is building or some other portals are building, right? So we said, let's do X. And there was something that he had already done. Then we said, okay, let's do, a big marketplace. Of course, he had done it. Then we said, okay, let's do luxury, high-end. He had done exclusively. We said, why don't we just enable sellers? He'd done Unicommerce. So there is someone in this whole ecosystem, e-commerce ecosystem, who's seen ahead of most other peers. That is Kunal Bahl for you. He's the founder CEO of Ace Vector Group now, which is of course, Snapdeal, but other companies as well. And he's also a very, very prolific investor. He invests in early stages largely. And of the 250 odd, right, Kunal? 250 odd investments he's made, they about score 12 unicorns now?
Some number.
Yeah, so 12 unicorns. If you look at the names of companies he's invested in, Ola, Razorpay, Shadowfax, Beardo. I can just keep on the list going on and on, but we'll discuss some of what is his Midas touch in those things. Kunal is a very, very active voice in the startup circles in India, right? And one of the key voices on how to take India forward in the digital age. And mind you, he's as young as he looks, perhaps younger than he looks, right? So, guys, join me to give a rousing welcome to Kunal. So, Kunal, thank you so much for coming over here. I know it's been an interruption in your busy schedule.
Not at all. Firstly, thank you so much. I've felt so inspired from the moment I've come here. We got here sometime yesterday afternoon, and my special thanks to Sadhguru, Ashutosh, yourself for seeking me out, and to Prasad ji, who's been our partner in crime since yesterday until tomorrow while we are here. He's been absolutely fantastic and telling us everything about Isha. And to obviously Sadhguru, with whom we spent some time last evening and walked away completely inspired from that conversation.
So Kunal, let's start with your entrepreneurial journey. Are you an accidental entrepreneur? There are stories about how, there is a visa or were you always in your mind an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think almost all entrepreneurs are accidental entrepreneurs. It's just how big of an accident started it. I always had that bug, or as we say, kida, in me, that I wanted to do something of my own even when I was a kid. But I think my life has been actually peppered by various fits and stops, various unforeseen circumstances, various failures along the way. And in some ways, as I reflect back, when you're saying all these really nice things, the only thing going through my mind was all the times when things didn't work out. And I'm like, nobody talks about those as much. And everyone's, you're so kind and gracious about all the things that seem to have worked out. But when I reflect back, I remember more of those things than things that may have worked out. But I think my journey of entrepreneurship mostly started when I was in the US. I just graduated. I was working at Microsoft. I was happy, enjoying my life in Seattle. And then one day I was sitting at my desk and I got a 2-line email which said, the subject said something very simple. It said your H-1B visa petition. So it's completely benign subject line. It's like, okay, it must be something procedural. So I just click on it. And it was a 2-line email saying, Dear Mr. Kunal, your H-1B visa application has been rejected. Please talk to your manager for next steps. And, it's almost like, as they proverbially say, a bus hit you. So I got hit by a bus because I thought I had my life charted out in front of me, that I'll graduate from college, I'll work for 2-3 years in some name brand tech company in the US, and then embark on my entrepreneurial journey in Silicon Valley. So in my head, I was very clear where I was headed. And suddenly in that very moment, in that very instant, all of it shattered. And it was, for good or bad, not the first time a shattering moment had hit me. So maybe I was slightly better at dealing with it. But very quickly I realized that, this is not something you can go petition and say, no, please give me one more chance, or you didn't read my application properly. It was a lottery system. It's a coin toss, right? About 200,000 people apply, 50,000 people get a visa. So it was a 1 in 4 chance. And I didn't get it. I was in the 3 out of 4. But I came back and I was to India. I was basically asked to leave the US, and I came back and I was I was thinking, what should I do? Should I join Microsoft in India? What should I do? And I realized that this is probably a sign, right? Like, I've always wanted to get into entrepreneurship. This must be a sign in some ways. And somewhere there was an inner voice which said that, I just didn't feel like going and working for someone. And I called up my best friend from high school, Rohit, and I said, let's just do something together. And he was headed to the US, and he decided to not go, and then we started.
Wow, super. So this is the story of someone, who kind of can claim to be the poster child of e-commerce and the way it started. Wow, inspiring. But, even when you set up Snapdeal, and since then, your journey has been almost a roller coaster, isn't it?
Actually, all entrepreneurs' journeys, all businessmen's journeys are roller coasters, right? I was listening to some of the esteemed guests here earlier, and the reason many of us are probably here right now is because there is something we are trying to figure out in our businesses as well, which may or may not be going as per plan, or have not gone as per plan in the future, or there is something that we are concerned about, what may happen to our businesses going forward. I think from the outside, people's journeys look like they started from here and they are here now, and it was a straight line. But actually, the journey is a little bit like this. So I think maybe the only difference in the startup world or the technology ecosystem is everything is in the public domain. Right? So the good shows up on the front page of the newspaper and the bad shows up on the front page of the newspaper. So it's almost like you're living your life under the lens. of the entire world. But that doesn't go to show that it's not the same for anyone else. Almost any business person, any entrepreneur I've ever met, irrespective of the size or scale or scope of their business, have gone through their own trials and tribulations. The difference is how they've dealt with it. And at least what I can tell you is living with the trials and tribulations in public eye is not easy, but it teaches you a thing or two.
But how did you live through it? And one of the things that really strikes me is how you and Rohit have stuck together. Other founders have kind of moved apart, etc. And you guys have stuck together through thick and thin. And how have you managed? Where is it that you get these reserves from?
The greatest glory is not in not falling. It is in rising every time we fall. And I think over a period of time, when you are engaged in any kind of organization where you're responsible for various stakeholders, either your customers or your volunteers, your shareholders or your disciples, whoever it may be, when you're responsible, it gives you great inner strength to continue. Almost all of us have found ourselves at some point in time at the bottom of the abyss, when we feel nothing can improve from here, right? Like we are just sliding down a slope, a very, very slippery slope, and there is no way up from here. Almost nobody you meet can give you advice that will work. Almost nobody you work with believes in you. And you yourself start questioning your own capability and your own abilities. And at that very moment, when you feel you're at the absolute bottom of the abyss, if you can just muster that little bit of courage to continue, bit by bit, you realize you come out of the trough. And when you're on the other side of the storm, you gather the strength, you feel the strength of having navigated through it. And it's only when you've gone through these, troubling times that you develop that confidence internally, and you also realize what were the reasons you were able to get past those. And to the point you made, I think being blessed with a business partner and a co-founder who's, with whom and we both have absolute trust. Oftentimes, I've seen, cases where things are going really well and partnerships fall apart.
Absolutely.
Because, one of the two parties may feel that, hey, all the success is because of them.
Yeah.
And the other person just taking a free ride. Conversely, the same thing happens when things are going poorly. Where the smallest of fissures, smallest of cracks can just break open a partnership. Because, again, the same way in good times, one person can blame the other one, say that take all the credit. In bad times, one person can blame the other person that all the bad things are because of you. I think that absolute trust, absolute respect, absolute belief in each other's capabilities, each other's strengths and weaknesses, and the ability to be vulnerable with each other and not having to put just a strong front every day is so critical. We're all human. We may have gone through our, twists and turns in life. Some come out better than others, but everyone comes out with their scars. Some put up a better front than others also, right? Some can talk well also, despite having gone through it, and some can't. But what I can say is that and this holds true in our personal lives also, right? Like when it's important to have that trusting relationship with a partner so that when you have your low days, the other person is there to pick you up. And when they have their low days, you are there to pick them up. And that's what defines a great partnership.
Excellent. So you said, and I think, you have a very multifaceted experience, if I may see. You've seen the real heights. And like you say, you've seen, just visualize for us, a lowest point that you were, and when you started questioning, what was going in your mind, and how did you just come back from the brink, as it were?
Yeah, I think in some ways our greatest powers also come from our greatest wounds.
Absolutely.
Right. So, and actually, at the lowest points in one's journey, actually happen when you feel people around you have lost faith in you. When people around you are questioning your abilities, because until that point you can still, keep pushing forward. That's when you start feeling very lonely, right? That I'm all by myself. I think to the point you made earlier, Ashutosh, having a great support system, either in a business partner, or I feel I've been very blessed with a fantastic family. Like my wife's here. I'll embarrass her a little bit. She's sitting here somewhere at the back. But she's been a great. I think she should stand up.
Yashna, why don't you just stand up?
I think I remember at the lowest points whenever I've had lowest points, and there have been many, at work, things would be really stressful. It would seem like the whole world is collapsing on you. Everyone wants a piece of you during the day. Everyone's coming with problems to you, and you have more problems on your plate than you have solutions.
Yeah.
Right. But then when I would come home and I would open the door, and my kids would run to me, and I would meet Yashna, and they won't care. They won't care that, who you are. They won't care that what success you've had or what success you've not had. They just want you to be happy.
Correct.
All they want is you should be at peace, you should be happy, you should be with them physically and emotionally while you're at home. And I think that played a very big role. I think one more practical thing which really helped is what happens oftentimes is with success, some of our personal desires also keep growing.
Yeah.
Right? We feel that we had this much, now we have this, so our personal lifestyle should move in step with our success. For whatever reason, maybe I'm a bit conjuice, as they say in Delhi, but I think I never let personal lifestyle move in step with any amount of success that may have come our way.
Yeah.
And as a result, what happens is when you see professional shocks in your life, which may or may not be in your control, usually nobody brings a shock upon themselves, right?
Yeah.
It happens to you.
Happens, yeah.
Right? Sometimes it builds up slowly and then happens suddenly, or sometimes it just happens suddenly.
Yeah.
But when you get professional shocks, but you haven't let your personal lifestyle catch up with any success that you may have, your ability to absorb those shocks as a family is a lot better.
Yeah.
Because then you know that your personal lifestyle will not be impacted as long as it's been modest and comfortable but modest.
Yeah.
That gives you tremendous mental strength in that period of agony to deal with any kind of professional or financial shock that you may face in your work life.
Yeah, excellent. Kunal, yesterday there was a question on exactly the point that entrepreneurs at times seem to feel lonely and where they should do. And I think what Kunal is saying about how to have a support system and keep one's kind of lifestyle modest to the point of trying to manage is very, very great point, Kunal. The other piece that I really like about your career journey is the kind of pivots you have taken and how bold they have been. I mean, you ran a very successful coupons business, then flipped to marketplace, you flipped out to value, and you're building. What are those triggers? Because most of us become so possessive about what we've built, and that was another point that came yesterday, that we're just not able to see how to let this thing go.
Yeah, I think it's tough because as operators or entrepreneurs, we get so attached to the problem statement, right? And then 24/7, even in the shower, even while sleeping, we're only thinking about that problem statement all the time. When we meet people, we are asking them for inputs about that problem statement. When we are at a family dinner, we are thinking about that problem statement. And then finally, when we see some success in that problem statement, we feel validated. But we live in a dynamic market environment. There are competitive forces at play. There are all kinds of forces at play, which may or may not be in your control. And sometimes you have to hence pivot out of what you're doing. Sometimes it's a hard pivot. Sometimes it's a soft pivot or a gradual pivot. But in business, you have to relinquish your attachments a little bit to be happy. Because if you're too attached to a project, an initiative, a campaign, a person, you'll never be happy. You'll always carry this, Atlas level burden on your shoulders of, oh, this could have been this way, that could have been that way, that person could have done something differently. But the goal is to keep moving forward. The goal is to put, whatever happens, something shifts in the market, something doesn't go as per plan. You have to pick yourself up, put one foot ahead of the other and keep moving forward. You can't just get paralyzed and say, I picked this problem statement, I saw some success, early success in it, now I will see it till the end of the world. Now, that doesn't go to show that, leave things half-baked. It's important to also finish things. It's important to take things to their logical conclusion. However, there comes a point where you realize that it's no longer working. Or it was working, but some facts have changed around us. Maybe more competition has come in. Or maybe that some regulatory changes have come. Where it's now become infeasible to operate a business like that or that type of product. And you have to change. Because if you don't, you become irrelevant. And so I feel that at least it's always been a survival instinct for us that we've never thought of failure as an option, right? It's never, I tell people that I feel it's a manufacturing defect we have, that failure is just not an option. We don't think that we can fail, we should fail, or that is like option A, B, C, option fail, right? That doesn't exist in our head. So we will find our way. We'll always navigate our way, find that narrow crevice to squeeze through if needed, but just make sure that we keep our head in the game. The world we live in is so dynamic right now. It is changing so dramatically. Every day, technology is playing a role, regulations are playing a role, policy is playing a role, various market environment factors are playing a role. And it is so critical for any business operator to just first and foremost keep their head in the game. Because today may be a tough time for you, right? And all of us, as I said, go through tough times. But, don't let the journey end at any point. Because 6 months later, 12 months later, 24 months later, some facts may change. And if you keep your head in the game, if you stay in the game, you may actually be a big beneficiary. So at every time when we were at the fork of saying, should we just shut down or should we keep going? Even though we didn't have all the answers that if we took the let's keep going path, what will happen 3 years, 5 years, we didn't know. But we always picked that path. And 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and hence something changed that gave us conviction that this was the right path in hindsight.
But, when you come to that fork, how do you realize you've been at that fork? For instance, you were in marketplace and then you moved to value side. When did you realize that, quote unquote, it's not working and then we may need to make a fork? Are there metrics you choose, or is it a general intuitive feel that you get around you?
I think it's a combination of many things. It's also about, not living in a bubble. Oftentimes when we are operating businesses as leaders, we are surrounded by people who are equally obsessed about the problem statement, right?
Absolutely.
So companies themselves become a bit of an echo chamber of sorts, of everyone saying the same thing and believing the same things, right? And not realizing the world around you is changing so dramatically. And then one day you realize, poof, it's all gone into thin air. So I think it's a combination of all of the above. I think most importantly, it's about keeping your ears to the ground as to how the world around you is changing, the environment around you is changing, and how you need to adapt to it. And as I said, finding that part of that market. See, if you operate in a large market, the benefit is that you can pick a small part of it and say, hey, I will dominate this. And that by itself can be a very large business. You don't have to go on global conquest. Because, if you are everything to everyone, you'll be nothing to anyone also. So it's better to just be very focused and disciplined on one sizable problem statement rather than saying, hey, I'll go after everything.
So that brings me to the question which, has kind of involved a lot of us since yesterday about scale, right? Usually people think of scale as growth, increase, on and on and on. And yesterday there was a very interesting point on someone asked about how can services firms like an architecture firm scale? And the question was, why do you need to look at scale only from a number of client growth? You could look at from a revenue perspective. In your journey, it's again been like you've consciously chosen not to scale, and then you have kind of come back and then you've gone. So how do you think of scale? And, you wrote a brilliant piece on ET a few days back. I'll come to that, but I think how do you look at scale and growth, especially for small entrepreneurs sitting here?
See, I feel why would a company not scale if it was truly world class at what it did? And being world class comes with excellence, right? And excellence comes with focus. So I think if one is just truly aspiring to be world class, and then recognizing that one would need to be truly excellent to be world class, and then recognizing that one would truly need to focus very sharply on that within, let's say, architecture, taking that example. I don't know anything about architecture or services, but saying that, hey, here is this problem statement that exists, which is fairly pervasive, not just in India, but around the world. How can I be the best, absolute best at this, better than anyone else out there? And then patiently just becoming excellent at it over a long period of time. Why would such a company not be a world-class company eventually?
So you're saying, world-class. So he says world-class. To be world-class, you've got to be excellent. To be excellent, you've got to be focused. I think, that's a clarity, remarkable clarity you have. So one of the criticisms of the consumer tech world, vis-a-vis the millions of small entrepreneurs and medium-sized entrepreneurs, businesses, family-run businesses, etc., is that guys who got a lot of VC money to kind of blow up, and you can do anything if you want to burn. And of course, burn has been brought into the business lexicon largely by consumer tech firms. What do you think about? I read today about Chandrasekhar and Chandra saying that, look, the business isn't the business. I mean, any business is to create a cash flow. How do you see, profitability or the lack of it?
Yeah. So, I know the startup janta gets, burnt a lot on this topic, pun intended. I think that we have to just zoom out a little bit, right? Like, we have to put it into context that what these 20, 30 somethings, 20, 30-year-old somethings are trying to do is nothing short of a miracle in many cases. Most businesses that are enduring in nature have been built over 20, 30, 40 years, or oftentimes generations.
Yeah.
What these 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds are trying to do is do it in a much shorter period of time. Right? Which means that a lot of the investment that has happened organically in other businesses over time, over decades, is happening over years and sometimes over months.
Yeah.
And just because it doesn't show up as capex, which is what it shows up in most traditional businesses, it shows up as a balance sheet item, not as a P&L item.
Yeah.
Here it shows up as a P&L item, but it's not very different. That said, there is a fine line between fast and impatient. And I think where the line starts getting crossed often in this world is from trying to have a healthy desire for speed to an unhealthy impatience for results, right? And that's when I think concerns start coming in. But I don't think that we have to be overly concerned about this. Obviously, there are negative implications where we are seeing a lot of people lose their jobs, etc., which is really, really unfortunate. That said, the amount of nation building that is happening real time around us, I'm sure many of us live in various cities, right?
Yeah.
Probably not a day passes now in our lives when we are not using at least one or two or three startups, products or services. So this is no longer something that is limited to a few buildings or a little cocoon in Bangalore or Gurgaon or Bombay, right? This is now the impact that startups are creating, is touching lives of millions, hundreds of millions of Indians, and creating employment for millions and millions of Indians, whether they are cab drivers or beauticians or delivery men or call center operators or engineers. These are all jobs that were created by the same very startups, right? So I feel we should not be overly critical
Or
at this,
simplistic, yeah.
or oversimplify something which can't be oversimplified. I was, recently just talking to someone. I said the other criticism is valuations, right?
Yeah.
So I was telling someone that the same way one should not, on the way up, I used to say, you should not conflate value and valuation. There is a value of a business and then there is a valuation of a business. Valuation is basically what someone's willing to pay for the shares of the business, which may or may not be the same as the value of the business today. The person's willing to pay valuation thinking it'll get to that value eventually. Now there is a big correction going on in the market, public markets as well as private markets in technology, which many would have read about, heard about. I say that same thing again, that on the way down, let's not conflate value and valuation, because the value may still be here, just the valuation is here for now, for various macroeconomic reasons. But the fact is, these businesses have built great value, which is touching lives of hundreds of millions of Indian consumers, making our country proud. So much of, the next big revolution in India is, after IT services, is actually the software product companies. Most, over the next 20 years, my view is most of the software products being bought around the world will be made in India. And that's a moment of great pride for all of us. And we must support this ecosystem as a result.
But, one of the points that is made is, yes, what you're saying is absolutely right. We do use not a day goes without using one of these apps, etc. But isn't it it's not the playing field is not level. How do, for instance, in the case of, say, e-commerce companies, how do sellers kind of survive if most of their kind of, existence is dependent on, say, platforms' own whims?
I think the way to also, while that may be the case in certain cases, demand is no longer concentrated in only one place, or two places, or three places. There are so many avenues of demand. Now there's an acute amount of democratization of e-commerce and tools that has happened.
And ONDC is coming.
And ONDC, right? You heard about that yesterday. Now you can be the smallest merchant in the smallest town of India, and you can set up your own website in literally 1 hour max. I'm saying 1 hour max, in 30 minutes. You can set up a Shopify website. You can plug in logistics providers with just clicking one button. You can configure payments with one button. You don't need to know how to write code. You don't need to know engineering. You don't need to hire developers, coders, product managers, designers, nothing. How empowering is that? So at some level, the smallest merchants in the country have now been absolutely unshackled. So I just see all of these as options. And it's at the option of the merchant now. They want to sell on a platform, they can. If they don't want to and they only want to sell directly, they can do that too. And as you said, there are other platforms which the government is evangelizing, like ONDC, which will further unshackle these merchants.
So yesterday we had a fairly animated discussion on ONDC. Of course, it's in early stages, so there's bound to be a lot of confusion. You are one of the first platforms. See, you seem to see things far ahead of others. Why did Snapdeal want to join or is willing to join ONDC when other platforms are still about, a little bit?
I think you give me more credit than is due. I'm just open to trying a lot of things. It's just that when they work out, they say, oh, wow, you saw it before. You're being kind and not laying out all the things that I may have embarked on that didn't work. The list of that will always be longer. It's the same way you're talking about investments, right? Like people talk about, oh, you invested in 15 unicorns or whatever, however many companies, etc. But if I read you the list of the companies I met and didn't invest in and then became unicorns, it's longer. But obviously...
You should pass on those tips to us.
But obviously I didn't want to interrupt a glowing introduction. Everyone feels nice hearing some of these things from time to time. Look, I feel that one has to, as a business, you have to be open-minded. I feel everything that eventually becomes big was at its infancy and was tiny at one point in time. Let's take UPI for instance, right? How many of us have done a UPI transaction ever?
Almost. Yeah.
Yeah, so
100%.
I can tell you, like in 2016, this room would have not, there won't even be one hand.
Yeah.
And UPI was existed in 2016. So what if, just what if, ONDC is the UPI of 2016?
Yeah.
And people are still thinking, how will it work? Will it work? Who will partner? What will be the dynamics between the companies and the platform?
How much to pay?
How much to pay? All these questions existed for UPI also. But then voila, right? 100% adoption.
Correct.
So one has to be open-minded about these things, and they may or may not work at times, but what if they do? So I'm always thinking, what if they work? Then would we want to be the one who said, oh, it won't work? Like, I don't want to be, I'd rather not be the guy put in the bucket of being a naysayer when my job is, I always think of it as pushing the boundaries of what is possible, not pointing fingers at things that can't be done.
Yeah. So that brings me to other part of your life of as an investor, right? And there was a very interesting question yesterday. People said, if I get some money from our business or if I raise money, shouldn't I just try and put it back in my own company because that always needs a growing company always needs capital, rather than building a portfolio of investment like you've done in Titan Capital.
Sure.
And the second point being that second question on this part is, how do you choose those investments? You said the list may be long, but you've had a remarkable record of picking up winners.
Yeah. So I'll answer the question I'm usually asked on the first one is, why should I not invest in real estate? I think most businessmen in India, the first question that comes to their mind when they make some money from their business,
Kitni koti hai?
how much real estate should I buy? So look, I'm no expert in real estate. I'm sure people who know how to invest or purchase real estate. I own zero real estate, zero. Right? I live in a rented apartment, always have lived in one, always will. So I think it's a very personal thing that if people want to invest in real estate. See, investing in startups, while it needs to be a commercially viable activity, is my way of sort of giving back. Right? Yesterday, spending time with Prasad ji, I don't know where he is, but I was just listening to him very carefully because obviously having been a 10-year resident here, he's very enlightened. And he was telling me about his personal story, how he got engaged in Isha and how now this is his way of giving back, right? In Gita it says like what you take owns you and what you give sets you free. In some ways, for me, this is my way to pay it forward. I don't, when an investment does well, when a company exits, goes IPO, or someone acquires it, if we make a return on that investment, 100% of that we reinvest back into the next cohort of startups.
Oh, okay.
So you've never really taken 1 rupee out to go buy a car or buy a house or fund a vacation, etc. Because I feel that when we started, there was no domestic capital ecosystem. No one willing to believe two guys with a PowerPoint presentation saying we will change the world. No one was willing to believe that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think our country needs believers who will irrationally believe in irrational people and are willing to, with great degree of authenticity, gaze into the crystal ball that these 25-year-old entrepreneurs will show up with. See, this is what will happen.
Yeah.
I will do this, then I'll do that, then I'll do this. And then 5 years later, this will happen. There is no data. There is no Excel sheet. There is no market research report. These are all category creating companies.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't exist. Nothing like that existed.
Absolutely.
There is no framework of understanding what will this grow up to be.
Yeah.
That's probably as irrational a decision one can make with your own money.
Yeah.
But I think once you don't need to feel confident to start. You need to start to feel confident. So once you start believing in these irrational human beings, your confidence grows in backing the next one and the next one and the next one. I think we mostly look for a fantastic team, a sizable problem statement, right? Because I feel that I also have finite time, have finite capital, don't have infinite, nobody has infinite money, infinite time. So because it's not just giving them capital, it's also giving them time, mentorship over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years maybe. And so one wants to pick great teams going after irrationally large problem statements, right? Which if it works out, that 1% or 0.1% chance if it works out, it'll move the needle for the country. And then obviously we want to back sustainable businesses, right? Where there is an ability for those businesses to, at some time, not immediately, but over a period of time, generate enough economics that they can be self-sustaining and they can continue without external capital. But most of all, it is being able to look into the eyes of the founder and seeing that twinkle, right? Seeing that spark and saying, "Ye kuch karega."
So in the recent past, tell me one, don't need to name it, but tell me one startup you've really gotten very excited about and how it will change tomorrow's India. That's the theme that we are looking at.
It's like picking between your children. I think it's very, very hard to do that. But broadly, we're excited about so many different things, right? Like I feel, about a few months ago, I had to go for a health checkup to a specialist in the hospital. This is one of the biggest, like probably the best hospital in the country in Delhi. And I show up there, I pay my 1,500 rupee OPD consultation fee. And then I stand in line, right? And then it was a 2-hour line to go see the doctor. And inside, there were 4 patients being seen at the same time, right? So I'm sure there is some misdiagnosis happening there because obviously how can the doctor process so much information? And this is not like a general physician, right? This is like a specialist, right? Where like lives are at stake, like one wrong medicine here, one wrong medicine there could change the fate of someone. And it was, while this is obvious and I think we are used to waiting, right? I think we are quite, in a populous country, we're used to waiting, we're used to standing in line. It's okay for us, like we're quite okay with it. But then I realized that there are people who've come from like far-flung places to see this doctor, right? Like they're sitting there for hours, days sometimes. And it was sort of an epiphany for me that this is arguably India's best hospital, right? With the best systems, best processes. I'm paying 1,500 rupees, which is a lot of money for a 10-minute consultation. I can't even imagine the state of healthcare that exists as you go outside the biggest cities of the country. And I think hence I'm sort of dedicating myself a lot right now to backing more and more healthcare related startups because I feel that if there's what will we do with money and UPI and ONDC and startups and VC funding if we don't have good health as a nation? So that is sort of what I'm very excited about right now.
So, you find you find entrepreneurial opportunities even when you're doing something, like that. So I think there are lots of questions in the audience and I've taken a lot of them, but I'll ask one last question before Shalini will open it up to the audience. There is a lot about culture that's talked about in these consumer tech cycles where, in circles where there's a lot of, layoffs we see, periodically and then, so it just goes from, the cycles. And I've actually recruited a lot of people who worked with you. And one universal thing is how they loved working with Kunal Bahl, etc., etc. But there are 2 camps now. There is this hardcore Elon Musk. Either you work insane hours or you don't show up. Or you have this, model, coach, care, Satya Nadella model. And both are shedding people, but in different ways. Which camp, so to speak, do you belong to?
I think I'm in the Kunal Bahl camp. But I, maybe I can define the camp. I think I think what you see from the outside again with respect to whichever definitions you may. These are again highly simplified,
versions of
popular
reality.
culture versions, Twitter versions, I would say, 140 character versions of
reality.
cultures. The intricacies and internal dynamics are obviously far nuanced. I think a very sort of soft guru-like culture is not just that, because at the end of the day, they have shareholders, they have targets, and so obviously there is rigor. And the same way companies that come across as being take no prisoners and all or nothing, there is care there too. At least for me, there are a few attributes that I associate with what is a good culture. Right? Like culture is sort of an overused word. First and foremost is just trust and transparency. The ability to be honest with your team members about most things. Like simple thing would be, our sector often gets a lot of media attention. And I used to notice there came a point where news about companies would come in the press before even the employees would know what's going on. And that to me is the saddest thing for a company. An employee should never find out what's going on in the company, especially if it impacts them, from the press.
Absolutely.
So the first and foremost thing is just communicate. Like over communicate if needed. So every month I would stand up in front of the company and say, here was what last month looked like. Here was the good. Here was the bad. Here was the ugly. Here's what we need to do next. Here are the people who did a great job. Let's celebrate them. And if there are any suggestions, any questions, I'm here to answer them. When you work with that level of transparency and communication on an ongoing basis, over a long period of time, trust gets built. I think the other thing is giving people the belief that there will be twists and turns, but I am here. Don't worry, right? I am here. I am with you. I am not going anywhere. I will help you. I'll help us navigate this ship. Sometimes you don't have all the answers. Many times you don't have all the answers as a leader. But some things need to be said because they need to be heard by your team. And oftentimes when you say them and they hear them, they galvanize around you to get you out of a tough spot also. But I would say for me, it's about trust, transparency, mutual respect. Like we've never had cabins like in our office, right? Like all of us sit together. I've never it's not like I'm working on something. I feel all of us are working on important things in the office, right? Like I'm not working on more important things. There may be some confidential call I need to take. I'll take a room and do it and then come out. But we've had a no cabin culture for the longest time in our company. Small things like those from a signaling standpoint, it's barely a sacrifice, right? I don't get my sense of purpose from sitting in a large cabin. I get my sense of purpose from working with fantastic colleagues who trust me and whom I trust. So I think it's all the small things, Ashutosh, that add up and build culture. But I would say first and most important would be trust and transparency.
So one small thing, and then maybe Shalini, you can take question. Do your employees, in these town halls, question you, stand up for you? Stand up to you? I saw it in Google actually. In Sergey Brin and Larry Page were there, and the guys were absolutely militant. So is that the same kind of culture you've built in Snapdeal?
It's the same type of enabling atmosphere we have built, where anything can be asked. Militant may be a strong word, but I don't think we've seen militancy yet. But what we also do is we also have to appreciate we are in a different culture than the US. Here there is a different kind of paradigm that folks have in mind, which I try to overcome. But I understand we all have to build our businesses in a certain cultural context. We are not just business people, right? We also are in a Indian culture, which is more empathetic, warm. There is a certain amount of hierarchy in our society while we try to break it, but it shows up at the workplace one way or the other, and we all see it. What we've done is when we have before a town hall, we circulate a form where anonymously people can send questions also. Because I do understand people are shy. They don't want to be we don't like, as people, as Indians, we don't like the spotlight on us a lot. But that doesn't mean there isn't a worthy question that needs to be asked. And so we create enabling environment so that whatever needs to be asked gets asked.
Excellent. Shalini, guys, questions? Anyone who has a question for
Before we move to the questions, Kunal and Ashutosh, what a wonderful, wonderful start to day two. A round of applause. As there was this conversation that was going on, there were a few things that struck me. The first that struck me was, Kunal, you started with trust on your partnership with Rohit, and you ended with trust for your employees. So somewhere that just kind of shows the kind of organization that you built and the kind of innate ethos and philosophy that you have. Another, I think, which would have resonated with a lot of you was on that entrepreneurial journey not being a straight line, which we all see from, we started here and this is where we are, but it is that ups and downs that are there, which we don't see. So that resonated a lot as well. Something that you said, but I think there was an insight in there, at least for me, which was, as a slogan, it looked very nice, which was world-class, excellence, focus. But the insight was after that, what you said, to say, find that problem statement on which you can focus to build on excellence and create a world-class organization.
Absolutely.
I think most of us don't do that. Most of us, what we do is we find to say, okay, let me start a business in this area because I like this segment or I like this area. We don't go with the thought process to say, what is it that I can solve? Or what is that need that I can plug? So that was a big insight for me there, Kunal. And I have to show this because I thought it was brilliant. You started with to say value, valuation, again, a very nice concept that you said, but you started with value here and valuation here. And very quickly your hand changed to the value could be this, but the valuation could be here. I just thought that that act was I don't think you did it purposely, but it meant a lot. It had a lot of heavy thinking behind it and experience that you've been through. That came out. Another one that I thought, I saw Jebby very quickly write it down on his laptop was on pushing the boundaries. That you want to be in that lot which is pushing the boundaries and not in the naysayers. This was on that ONDC, I think, that time that the conversation was going on. But the biggest one for me was the whole philosophy that you have to say, that the wealth will keep coming, but the modest lifestyle remains. And the appreciation that you had for the silent partner who may not be getting all the media coverage and all the ladies sitting there, I just thought that your generation gives this credit to the people behind it. So that was... And now I will open it to questions. But Jebby, you had a question that you wanted to ask. Would you want to ask? You want me to ask you for you? Okay. So we are all hearing, Kunal, that India is going to be, this is India's decade. There is everything that we are doing currently which is going to ensure that we come right there. What in your mind do you think are these drivers for this?
Yeah, I think... Firstly, thank you for such a fantastic summary. I didn't realize I was sounding so smart. So
you weren't sounding smart. You are smart.
Thank you. When I was I joined college in 2002 in the US, and it was right off the bat of the internet back then. Internet boom and bust.
Yeah.
And I used to hear there was still a lot of recency between what had happened, like the big boom and the big bust. But I was more, given my mindset, only focused on the boom, not the bust. And I used to keep telling if only I was born like 4 or 5 years earlier. If only I was born 4 or 5 years earlier, I would have partaken in this biggest boom because nobody knew when it would come again.
Yeah.
And in 2002, everyone thought, this is over.
Yeah.
It's done. Right? This internet thing came and went. Now it'll be like a slow thing that will continue. Today, I just feel so happy and proud that I live in the India of today because this is the beginning of India's golden era. I do feel that after almost 1300 years, we are going to be a wealthy country again. And And I do feel that if you look at even the facts, right? We were it took us 30 years to go to add 3 trillion to our economy.
Yeah.
It's going to take us 7 years to add the next 3 trillion. How fast are we growing? And that growth will come to each one of us.
Yeah.
It'll come to our children. It'll come to our grandchildren. What a time to be alive in this country, right? And I feel that we should all just grasp this opportunity with both hands. This has not happened before. This didn't happen in our parents' generation. This didn't happen in our grandparents' generation. This hasn't happened for centuries, where India's time has come, where we could unequivocally, unambiguously, without any caveat say, India's time is here.
Yeah.
Right? Why would we not want to take full charge of this and take full control and just navigate to a great place ourselves and our great country? Also, I feel that we have a government that is very enabling. When this word startup, which is now part of regular parlance. I was in Bangalore last week. I was having dosa at one of those modest restaurants, very fantastic dosa, but very modest restaurants. And the 2 waiters who were standing behind me, they were talking about VCs and startups. Right? And it was the most, they knew everything. Usne sequoia ne usme dala, usne usme dala, right? They knew their stuff.
They could be angels themselves, for
Yeah,
all you know.
maybe they are. So, and all of this has been obviously because of the startups and the founders who've taken these risks, but also because the government has evangelized and celebrated startups like never before and nowhere else in the world. And I think we should not, because I've been involved in many of these government initiatives through the years. I'm not just saying it because it's, interesting or nice to say it, but I genuinely do believe that the fact that from top to bottom in the government machinery, startups are celebrated, it plays a very big role. Finally, digitization. No country in the world is as digitized as ours.
Absolutely.
I mean, UPI, ONDC, Aadhaar, account aggregator, India Stack, India Health Stack, these are unheard of. You talk to folks outside India, they're like, oh, you live in some futuristic country or what?
Yeah.
And when you tell them this is the India of 2022, they are just flabbergasted, and this is just the start for us. So imagine what else will be coming. I always think, where are we going? In 10 years out, would we be, let's ask ourselves, right? How many of us think that 10 years out, India would be a better place than it is today? I sure think so. And I'm sure we didn't feel this way maybe 20 years ago.
And 70% Americans won't feel that way today.
Yeah, imagine, right? We are all feeling so happy and invigorated and excited about the future. What a time to be alive in India right now.
Kunal, just to a large number of participants here are from small, medium enterprises, entrepreneurs. For this that you mentioned, that this India is going to be our decade and the drivers that you mentioned, what role can they play? What would you advise them, or what guidance could you give to them to say, this is what you could do to help build that India that we all want for our children and grandchildren?
Firstly, I feel no entrepreneur is a small or medium or large or very large. An entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. And I think every entrepreneur plays a role in the lives, impacting positively first the lives of their own families, then their employees, their customers, etc. So, my father is a small, medium business entrepreneur, but I've never sort of bucketed him into an SMB entrepreneur. For me, he's a builder, right? He's an entrepreneur. He's someone who's made me extremely proud for starting something from zero and then building all that he's been able to build in his lifetime. And I think each one of us, irrespective of size of our business, scale of our business, number of employees we have, our turnover, the type of clients, should feel immensely proud that we took the risk to start up.
Yeah.
which is not an easy risk. I can tell you, I can empathize. It's not an easy risk to take. The fact that we stuck by it and continue to build through all the thick and thin, as long as we keep doing our bit, over a period of time, all our actions will collectively add up to moving the needle for India. So at least that's what I would feel about that.
Great. We will open to questions and let's see. The first hand that went up here was here. Go ahead.
If someone had a return issue that I can't solve.
Yeah. So I would like to tell everyone that Kunal is my superhero. I've told this to him, but just to let everybody know. So Kunal, you've spoken about everything. Would you want to speak up anything about self-belief? Because I think it is one of the most key elements when you start a company. You need to believe on yourself. And I think you are the greatest role model when it comes to this quality. So anything that you would want to talk about this?
Thank you. You've been very kind now and earlier.
He's building a metaverse company, by the way. He could be a competitor unless we jump the bandwagon.
Metaverse. Okay, maybe as long as he gives me a nice looking avatar in the metaverse, I'll be happy. So, look, I feel it's only when you look back of how you dealt with some challenges in your life can people say, oh, this guy had self-belief.
Yeah.
But when you are in the eye of the storm, like you're not thinking about, do I have self-belief or do I have resilience? Do I have confidence? You're continuously just moving forward.
Yeah.
Success is really just the act of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm.
Wow.
And there is, I can tell you, there'll be many failures along the way. Some small ones, some micro ones, some macro ones. But I think somewhere that confidence, that inner belief that this will pass also. It's fine. Let's just keep going. That finding that courage to continue every time to say, we'll figure it out. Let's keep going. Being able to continue to move forward without all the answers is very important. I think everyone from the outside would feel that, oh, Nima has some special ability to figure out an answer in tough times. Nobody does. All of us are human only. We have same biological frameworks. I think it's about just letting go a little bit of not needing to have all the answers to continue to proceed. Sometimes some answers will come to you. You just have to say, okay, I have 70% or 50% of the answers. It's good enough. Let's move forward. And we'll ingest with a lot of intellectual humility new facts, digest them, say, do we need to keep going on this path or do we need to change again?
Thank you. The second one here. Third was where?
Hi, Kunal. You said that you were born at the right time in India, unfortunately. I'm a decade older and I started being an entrepreneur at your age now. So I feel at times that I can be an...
How did you know his age? It's a closely guarded secret.
Internet, Wikipedia.
Oh, okay.
38 years old. For those
Don't trust everything on the internet.
Then he should tell us our real age.
Carry on.
Okay. So the point is, at all times, you feel you can become an independent with your past knowledge, and you're trying to be current. And one of the means for people like us is to be listening more to people young, very young in your organization. And at times, it causes conflict with the leadership. That's ... It's just something I'm trying to figure out. Second part to my question.
You
talked
please.
about...
There are a lot of people who need to ask.
Yeah, I just have to finish this. Who are the other influences? Because you had a good partner at work, but who are the other angels who could help you in your journey? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll take the second one first. I think sometimes folks get obsessed with surrounding themselves with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they feel quantity of, let me have one guy who will coach me about my personal life, one guy who will coach me about my professional life, one guy who's a subject matter expert about my business, etc. You actually don't need so many people. Oftentimes, what all you need is maybe one person or two people who you can truly trust, who you truly respect, and they can actually be your guide. Also, continuity in such mentoring relationships is most important because a person needs to have a lot of deep context about you as a person, also what you do at work and your challenges, etc. And same way as you can't have multiple life partners, right? Because then outside of all the other issues that may come with it, but giving each one of them context about everything that happens in your life is very challenging. So I've always been of the view that both ways. Like I will have one or two relationships where I will go very deep with them, right? I'll be all like totally unconstrained with all my insecurities, totally unconstrained about all my challenges, all my plans, which maybe just also all my demons, right? Where I know they will not judge me. I know they will guide me the right way. And I know they will support me even if we have a disagreement on something. Where if we agree to disagree, but I yet go my way, they will still support me. And after things don't work out, when I go that way, they will not point fingers at me and say, I told you so. So I think one needs maybe one or two such relationships and not more. What is very, very critical, however, is having a very deep, trusting relationship at home. There is almost no replacement to any kind of professional mentor than having a deep personal relationship at home. It could be a parent, it could be a sibling, it could be a spouse, it could be, maybe some for more elderly people, probably even a child. So I'm truly blessed to have like at least two such relationships professionally and have one such relationship personally. And I think without them, I wouldn't know how I would do anything without them.
Hi, Kunal. Thanks for sharing your, beliefs and thoughts so candidly. So one thing that I've realized is you value your team's contribution because you're so transparent with them and you share whatever is happening in the company. We are doing the same with our team. My question is that because we have to pivot or change the course of whatever we are doing, sometimes drastically because of the outside forces. I mean, when we have prepared our team to work in a particular direction, then suddenly, because of this change in thought process or our decisions as leaders, we want to now shift their focus or their direction. How easy it is to do that, especially if you have a large team, and what challenges have you faced and how you have handled them?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thank you. And I've had to deal with that more than a few times. And I think most business operators, right, have had to deal with that. The first and foremost is you have to have high conviction yourself.
Correct.
The worst thing is you say we are going down path A, now we're going to go down path B, and then 3 months later you realize actually path A was better, or actually now have path C in mind.
Correct.
As a leader, one would lose absolute credibility because then people will never believe you again. So I always take a lot of time to internalize if I have to talk to external stakeholders or external people whose opinion I value that, hey, we're going down this path for XYZ reason. I feel we need to go down this path or we have these two options. What do you think? I will take different people's views. I'll digest it, assimilate it, reflect on it. But then once the mind is made, it is made. Then we have to stick with it. In my head, then I have almost an irrational belief in that path. Because there'll be enough people when you go talk to them, now we need to go from A to B, they will poke holes.
Correct.
They will say, this will not work, that will not work. Have you thought of that? Have you thought of this? Say, look, I've thought about as many things as I could. Some answers I have, there are some answers I don't have. but a combination of logic and what I feel in my bones, this is the right path for the business now. After that, it's a grueling, physically and emotionally grueling process of communicating to the team. And it can't be just one fine day you drop a bomb on the team saying, Sab badal gaya, everything is changed now. It starts with first taking your leaders into confidence, saying, guys, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Because, so that they are also part of the process. That either strengthens your resolve or gives you some food for thought because they are closest to your business versus anyone else outside the business.
Yeah.
Once you have them aligned with you, then you say, okay, now let's talk to the team. And with the team, it's not one communication. It's not like one email or one town hall. Often you would have already been communicating path A for the longest time. So that's running in everyone's blood now. Like people are fired up, come to work thinking path A is the path of the company. Now suddenly you're saying it's path B. So it's not, suddenly they're not going to have a blood transfusion overnight. Right? Saying, okay, now B runs in my body. So it's going to be a gradual process, often will require a lot of communication, one-on-one discussions, small group discussions, town halls, celebrating those who are doing well in path B. So it's a combination of 100 different things that slowly, and you'll see the ship turn in that direction. And before you know, your team that is aligned with you would have made it their own, more than you yourself would have. But I think the key starts with you having absolute and undeviating focus that this is and conviction that this is the path for us now.
But in that process, do you see that in most of your pivots, hard pivot for instance, there are leadership transitions as well necessitated by this? Or you've seen the same leadership adapt to the new?
For the most part, it's been the same. But look,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, as a leader, a leader's job is not easy.
Yeah.
Right? I think no leader's job is easy, irrespective of size of organization, whether someone has only one employee or has 100,000 employees. Leader's job is never easy.
Yeah.
When you have to convince someone and invigorate someone with your vision, how can it be an easy task?
Absolutely.
There will always be some people who may not be aligned, right? They'll have their own irrational belief of what needs to be done. I think in those cases, it's usually best to have an honest conversation that, either you are with us or we understand that it's not going to work. Because what one doesn't want is in these significant shifts that one does, you have naysayers around. You have folks who are a negative influence on the entire operation. I think that can be highly, highly disruptive.
Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Shravani from Hyderabad. We run a 100-bedded multi-speciality hospital. I was really connected to you because I'm an accidental entrepreneur.
Question,
and
please.
Yes. So my question for you is, what would improve the Indian healthcare system? If we Google it and see the top 10 best hospitals in the world, India is not there. And as I am starting up a healthcare setup, my question for you will be, can you navigate us so that 5 years down the line, we will see our healthcare in the top 10 in the world?
Thank you, ma'am. And I think you're doing great work with starting this hospital because it's much needed, as I earlier said. I wish I knew the answer to your question because I would be doing that rather than giving gyan over here then. But at least my lens and the only thing I understand is how to look at a problem statement and how to use technology potentially to solve it, right? Not technology for the sake of technology, but because somewhere technology is a stand-in for things that takes a lot of humans to solve or humans are incapable of solving. So a lot of my focus is actually how do you reduce my personal view is I don't think given our population of 1.5 billion now that we'll be ever able to build enough hospitals.
Yeah.
I just don't think it'll be possible. I think we have to focus a lot more on preventive, preventive healthcare, as well as at-home healthcare, and healthcare that uses more technology, so that less people have to go to hospitals. I just feel we will not be able to build ever enough hospitals to serve 1.5 billion people, especially given the conditions in which a large part of our population lives in. We just will not be able to provide them the healthcare facilities. So a lot of my focus right now is also identifying innovative technologies that can reduce the burden on the healthcare system. And obviously there will be those who will create technologies that will make existing healthcare system, physical infrastructure more efficient, so that patients can go in and out faster. Like rather than staying there for 3 days, can they come out in 3 hours and with the same level of treatment? Now this sounds very utopian today, but if you think about the average lifespan has gone from 28 years in 1947 to 72 years now. Obviously, we've made a lot of ground as a humanity in the realm of healthcare and preventive medicine. But I feel we have just scratched the surface till now. But that's what I'm very focused on from the healthcare standpoint.
There was somebody here.
Yeah, Kunal, this is Prabhakar, I head Financial Institute. Thank you for your insight and really great to hear you. I just have one question. So you said you invested a lot of unicorns. So can you share your learning where you're not invested, but those companies gone into a great unicorn? Because I can see a lot of unicorns sitting around.
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's called there is a word for that also, sir. It's called the anti-portfolio. So, or the other word for it, tears in your eyes portfolio. I got our team at Titan Capital to do some rough back of the envelope in terms of out of the 100 unicorns in India, let's say if we've invested, they did this when there were 75 unicorns. That of these, how many have we invested in? So I think we've invested in maybe 12, 15, etc. But how many have we met? We met more than half of them when they started. So, our hit rate is lower than our miss rate. I think we are really good at missing. I think we're better at missing than hitting probably. But I feel that, look, it's sometimes founders will also surprise you, because they also would, oftentimes when we've been surprised by companies that did work out amazingly despite us not having invested in them, is that we underestimated the founder's ability to pivot out of the business that they presented to us. Wow. Right? And now that's a tough one always, because when you're investing at the earliest stages of a business, there is no data. It's really, as I said, two guys, a PowerPoint, and some just vague idea. But it's very hard at that point to say that, okay, even if the vague idea doesn't work, they'll come up with another vague idea, so let's back them. Because there is an opportunity cost of capital. As I said, we don't have infinite time and infinite capital. So one would go down the order of certainty of success, where if it's a good team, seemingly good idea, and has the ability to generate good economics in perpetuity, that comes first. Only if we can't find companies that fit all three, then we'd say, okay, maybe the idea is secondary. But fortunately, we find enough which fit in the first bucket that we don't go in the second bucket. But some of those second bucket founders are just outstanding entrepreneurs, and they navigate their way into finding something else that is incredibly valuable to build. But I always feel that the market cap of companies that we will not invest in will far exceed by orders of magnitude the market cap of companies we'll invest in. But our focus as an investor needs to be that, hey, what is the impact we can create? And we don't need to be in all the good companies. We just need to make sure the companies we invest in are good.
Kunal, just a follow-up question on this. What role does the gut play in these investment decisions?
Sorry,
What's the role that gut plays in this decision making? Irrational belief is how you put it.
so, if one were giving this as an interview to a financial publication, I would say it's no gut. It's all science and math. But given we are amongst friends here, I'll say it's all gut and no science and maths.
Hello, sir. My name is Jeet. Basically, now we see there are many layoffs happening in the startup industry, many losses happening. How do we as entrepreneurs see, because our competition are going to do highway or my way? So how do we grow our startups and how do we scale ourselves?
This is a funding winter. I think you wrote about it in a piece last week.
Yeah, so just sorry, sir, the question is?
That how do you grow yourself when
we
there's a
see
lot of
massive
competition?
layoffs happening?
I actually feel you should be happy as long as you are not doing the layoffs. I think you should be happy that the competition is in bad shape. This is your time to shine and grow. But see, if you are at a place as a business where you have mukti, you don't need other people's money, right? Which is it's a fantastic place to be in this environment. Cost of talent is going down. Cost of marketing is going down. Cost of acquiring customers is going down. The stress of growing unnaturally fast is going down. So I feel this is the best time to be building a business. You can do it the way it should be built, which is patiently enjoy yourself, right? Like build it like you're building it forever and as a lasting, enduring enterprise, and not one that is subject to the vacillations and the irrationality of competition, which is spending irrationally or hiring irrationally or poaching your people irrationally at irrational markups to their salaries. None of that will be happening today for the most part. I feel it's a fantastic time to just double down.
Can I add my 2 bit to it, Kunal, with your permission? So I think this would be the best time for people to hire those people from the marketplace that have been laid off but actually wanted to start their own business, wanted to be entrepreneurs but joined a company. Get those in your startups and build the business before they find a better opportunity. So use them. There was a question. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I just heard about you when you were saying there are lots of up and downs in your journey. So I would like to know one experience where you thought it'll go very well, but it went very bad, and one experience where you thought it'll be quite okay, but it went very good. The main reason of asking this is because while doing any planning, we plan, we take an action, and then there's an outcome. So would like to understand the mind game, how it comes, and how did you face the outcomes in both the different situations?
Yeah, there's so many. I think at least my entrepreneurial journey can be summarized with experiences only in those buckets, 2 buckets. So I'll have to think a little hard about which ones to highlight in a public forum. I think one of the hardest things in the early days was to hire people. And because, while founders think they have supernatural ability to accomplish the, unaccomplishable, but without a good team, there is no way to hire people. And generally hiring the first few people is the hardest because they are the most important also, but they will have the least conviction because you have nothing to show. Our first office was in the basement of a lawyer's house in the furniture market of Delhi. If someone's from Delhi, Kirti Nagar. And we used to really struggle to hire people. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges. I remember when someone would come, my sister-in-law would be our HR manager working out of her home, obviously. And she would post on Naukri.com. She would do the initial screening of people on the phone. They would ask, "Madam, aapse kab milenge?" Like, milenge. But obviously she was always virtual. I think she was ahead of the curve. And then those people when they would come for the interview to the office, right, they would ask, where is this office? And they'd be like, oh, you go down that street, you'll see a black gate, there's a blue Zen parked on the side, which has never moved. And then you turn right, there's a press wala there. And then on the right, there is a door. When you get there, ring the bell. And then usually me or Rohit would go open the door. Usually, like if in case they wanted water, Rohit and I would serve it to them, to the interviewee, to the candidate, right? If they wanted tea or the worst was if someone asked for tea or coffee, because then we would need to show our culinary skills, of which we had none. But in the early days, it's a very humbling experience. We came from Wharton and IIT and all these fancy days. It meant nothing. Meant absolutely nothing. So it was incredibly humbling in the early days of how to get past that initial period. We have nothing to show, not even an office, nothing. We can't even pay a decent salary. How will people trust us? And winning people's trust was really hard in the earliest days of the business. But then once you have a few people, and then success begets success after that. In terms of the other part where I think you asked when you thought things would go poorly but they went well, I remember we talked a lot about pivots today. We were when we started, we were selling like restaurant, spa coupons on our website, and we were doing reasonably well. We were the de facto platform doing that in the country. But then I'd gone to China and along with Rohit, and what we saw there really stunned us, that the real opportunity is to sell products. Not how it sounds very obvious, but it wasn't prevalent wisdom then, that selling products online versus selling vouchers online. And we literally overnight changed the business model. Everyone around us said, you guys will fail. You guys are doing the worst business decision ever, because you're taking a working business which has raised a lot of capital from the top venture capitalists in the world. You have a fantastic team. You're growing well. Why do you want to change your business?
And you're the market leader.
And you're the market leader, right? Like, so why do you want to? Because one understands when you need to pivot when things are not going well, which is usually when people pivot. I have rarely seen people pivoting when things are going well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But because we knew that all the people who are clapping for us right now will be slapping us in a few months. Because we could see what was coming. We could see that this space will crumble. We could see that we would never be able to live up to the promises we've made, because we had overestimated the market size by a very, very large order of magnitude. So unless we took the burden of changing a running business, nobody else would. And there will come a point soon where it will stop working.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, everyone will say, well, why didn't you guys change in time?
Correct.
So we wanted to do it ourselves. Thankfully, it worked out. So we didn't feel or we felt vindicated in that decision.
Yeah.
I'm afraid we have to close the session now. We stay with our time, but thank you so much, Ashutosh, for you bringing out the kind of insights that we did in Kunal, for your amazing thought and articulation, both of you.
Thank you.
A big round of applause.
So on this note, we will take a 30-minute. We'll take a 30-minute break, please, for today's RL one-on-one, we will kind of open the links as before shortly, and you guys can kind of book your slots. Thank you so much. Have a great break.